Thank you. Thank you, Tim, and thank you for the invitation here. I know for a TED Talk I'm supposed to be able to, I should walk around at the same time, but I can't walk and talk at the same time, and I certainly can't look at notes and walk and talk at the same time. The topic of what I want to talk about today is using technology to create, using the technology of a flipped classroom to create small groups for engaged activities. Activities with no technology, with all person-to-person discussion, no clickers, no PowerPoint, to banish technology, to use technology to banish technology. The problem I have in creating this is a course called Introduction to the Arts. The section I teach is a large lecture class, about 180 students, and in any case, every time I've taught this, the back third of the classroom, the lecture hall, is unengaged, asleep, texting, Facebooking, whatever may happen. I can create discussion sections, but with 180 students and 3 GAs, that means 60 students per discussion section. So what do? The irony here was that I also teach an online version of a similar class. And I'm convinced that the students in the online version of this class are more engaged in the class and are learning more. So the irony here was that I thought my problem was, how do I take what I've learned from teaching online and apply it to the classroom? Usually we think of it the other way around. So again, it's a way of thinking of using technology against technology. The breakthrough I had was in making this into a flipped classroom. And it was actually, I came up with this idea just a year ago sitting in this room at this SpotLight on Learning. And Tom Carpenter just made an offhand remark about how he uses his flipped classroom. And for the rest of the session, for the rest of the day that I was in here, my body was in the room, but I was furiously making notes about how I could actually make this work for my class. The key idea then is, as was often the case with a flipped classroom, the lectures happen outside the class, therefore relieving the students of the time that they might need to be coming to class every day. In other words, they are spending class time outside of class, viewing my lectures online, and taking quizzes online, the type of activity that they might otherwise do in class. And then we devote the class time to activities that actually engage the students. The structure of the class, and sorry, bear with me here, it's complex. Roughly 175 students. What I do then is I divide them into 2 groups. Half of them come on Tuesday, half of them come on Thursday. So I've got roughly 88 showing up on Tuesday, another 88 showing up on Thursday. On Tuesday, for example, of the 88 who show up, I divide them into 3 groups of roughly 30 students per group. These 30 students meet in 3 separate rooms, each one with their own GA. These GAs are doctoral students in interdisciplinary arts who are preparing to teach this class of their own the following semester. So from a student's point of view, we've gone from a class of 175 students to a class of 30 students. So therefore, we're able to take walks around campus, visit buildings, visit art galleries, and actually discuss art in groups. And I'll discuss in a moment actually what we do. So the flipped classroom, I did it by the seat of my pants, which is not recommended. I sat in my basement talking to my computer. I recorded the lectures using Camtasia. I created online quizzes, and I used material through Pearson, which is the publisher of the textbook we use, with videos and things called closer looks. For what actually happened in the classroom, I would meet with the GAs each week before class to basically give them a script for the class. Say, okay, here's what we're going to cover. Here's the topic, here are the activities, here are the discussion questions, etc. the TAs would lead each one of the sessions. And then I would come in, and this is actually an idea I got from Raymond Frost. I'm leaving another teaching thing that Tim had organized. Raymond and I were walking down the street and explaining to Raymond, and he said, "You should try this." So I would visit each of the rooms, in effect, as a visiting lecturer. So I would come in 20 minutes in group 1, then 20 minutes in group 2, then 20 minutes in group 3, answering any questions about the online class, online lectures, answering any other questions they might have, etc. We also experimented with having them all meet in the auditorium for the first 20 minutes of class and then breaking them up. I'm not sure which worked better. We'll try them both again next year. So in-class activities. The students would be presented with a problem, and then the TAs would have a series of discussion questions as prompts for the students to respond to. Such as, in class, I would have them read Plato's Allegory of the Cave. Or we would walk around campus and look for buildings that are classically inspired. Or we would go to a church and talk about how to stage a medieval play. Or we would do what we refer to as a sound walk around campus. What are the various sounds that one listens to out around campus? Then we would do various things such as think, pair, share. Each student sits down, makes notes, they pair up, discuss their ideas, and then share those ideas with the class as a whole. We also would have the students do presentations in which they would present material about the paradigms that they were learning. I'm going to skip over this for the time being now. For student accountability, there would be online quizzes to make sure that they would actually read the material. I would take attendance at the beginning, and then they would take notes in answer to the question prompts. They would have those, they'd hand those in at the end of class, and I would use those for their participation. The results. The good news is that students were clearly much more engaged in the class. They were, I could actually see eyes that were alive, and they were engaged, they were laughing, they were talking, they were clearly enjoying themselves. Attendance was up, evaluations were up. Overall, it was a much more dynamic experience. The bad news was that the grades on the midterm were significantly lower. So I made some changes for the second half of the semester. Each week I'd meet, during my meeting with the GAs, I would specify certain names, dates, terms that were important out of that discussion section, out of the readings, and I would have them make sure that they would build those into all of the activities, reinforcing those ideas. Final exam was no better. Changes for next year. Well, first of all, I think I need to have more quizzes on my on the online lectures. I was concerned that the students wouldn't read the book, so the quizzes were focused on the book. I figured they'd have nothing better to do, but they loved to listen to me lecture, but I now actually have to make sure they do it. I want to use the Pearson Study Guide. But there's a further problem, which is I'm concerned that the assessment tools I'm using are not actually capturing the learning that I hope is taking place. I'm testing them on names and dates and terms and using Scantrons, but I'm emphasizing student engagement. So my problem is, how do I create assessment tools that actually measure this learning that I hope is happening? And I've gotten great ideas here from Tim Vickers and Becky Simons and Mike Roy about how to do that I'm going to be employing for next year, such as using team-based learning, which again, Raymond Frost is a great advocate of, using more journals to assess them on their learning on the content, though I'm worried about over-journaling them. They already have to write journals about their art experiences on campus, and all of the GAs, of course, have to grade all of these journals, so there's a lot of reading to do. Next steps. The premise works, but it needs improvement, it needs refinement. The idea of using technology to create this student engagement works. And the key for me in continuing to make this class work is continuous improvement with it. And the idea for me with that is to get rid of a sense of ownership of the class, to get away from an idea of it being my class to a notion of it being our class, in which I include the GAs in the planning process. I ask them for ideas and build, because they're teachers too, and they're going to be teaching this, build their ideas into it, and use the advice we can get here from Tim and Becky and Mike the great resources we have here. And I hope, and this is the real reason I wanted to come and talking about this, that I'll get some further ideas from all of you. Thank you very much.
So I have given the signal to speak to the mic here. To my colleagues at the regional campuses, I apologize if you can't hear me at times. Our next speaker, thank you, Dr. Gandhi. While Dr. Geis is setting up, Bill mentioned two people, Mike Roy and Becky Simmons, in the academic technologies. We're all in the faculty commons. Dr. Eugene Geist is Associate Professor of Teacher Education at College of Education, and he's going to talk about Beyond the Cloud. Right. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr. Geist.
So a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about actually dovetail in with what you've already heard. I also teach a large lecture class, over 200 people. Unfortunately, for me, I don't have any GAs to help me. It's just me. And so some of the things, so I have to be even a little more inventive about how I use technology in the classroom. And we have lots of tools, and we have Blackboard, which is probably kind of the foundational tool that I use. But in the last couple of years, we've been really adding some things that have really changed the way I do things. The clicker system that Mike has really helped me to put in, and the Panopto system, which is the lecture capture system. And these things, along with have changed the way that I actually think about assessment, or that I think about learning in that class. So, whereas what I used to do was I would give tests like anybody else. I would hand them out on pieces of paper, and I'd make them do it in 2 hours and sit in their seat and not look at anybody else's paper and do it and turn it in. And it was very hard for me to grade. And at one time I decided, you know what? I am gonna go to using an online testing system. I'm gonna put my tests online. But that changed the way I had to think about the test, because I didn't want to do it as a proctored test. I didn't want to have somebody monitoring everything. So I said, well, I'll just have it open book, open note, and so I did that. And I noticed that there really wasn't a whole lot of change in terms of like everybody wasn't getting 100% every time. But what I did notice was that I was getting a lot more questions. I was getting a lot more engagement in terms of people sending me emails and saying, I was thinking about this question, and they weren't just questions about, I think this is wrong or whatever. They were thoughtful questions. And so I felt, that was really good. I thought, I'm going to keep doing this. Then I decided I used to do quizzes. I used to do little pop quizzes in class, and I put those on Blackboard. And then I decided, well, how can I make this into a more of a learning experience instead of a punitive type of thing where you come to class and see how well you do? And so what I did was I said, well, I'm going to put this quiz up for a week. You can take it as many times as you want. And the Blackboard system, I have a pool from my textbook. It has like 100 questions. And if you get 5 out of 10, you could take it again. But it may give you different questions. And I found that there are a number of students that will take it until they get a 10. They'll take it 15 times until they get a 10. Now, there are other ones that'll take it once and get a 5 and say, I'm done. Okay? That's fine. If that's good for them, if that's what they want, that's fine. But they have the opportunity to take responsibility for their own grades and for their own learning. I also added some online things where they could actually listen to some online podcasts, and I assign those, and then they write 5 little essays throughout the semester and turn it in. And again, I get some good feedback on that. And so it really changed. It wasn't just saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do my tests online," or "I'm going to adopt a flipped classroom model," which I've done in some of my other classes. But it was a more fundamental change of thinking about how these students have changed in the 15 years that I've been teaching here at OU, and thinking about then how are these kids going to change in the next 20 years, and how is technology really changing not just the way that we teach, but the way that students learn, the way that these students that are coming to us expect knowledge to be delivered. And how can we, again, within our boundaries of what we know as being best practice, how can we change those things to be better at delivering that in a way that they are more used to? And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some tools. I mean, I have an undergraduate in history, and so this is my, on my off time, that's what I do, is I listen to history and I think about history. And so I was thinking about this in terms of tools of societal change, just the things that we've had that have actually changed our society and the way we live. I mean, the wheel. The wheel changed because we could move things around, and then we needed to have roads, and so we had to build roads, but then you could transport things back and forth. You could transport heavier things. So it allowed for greater mobility. It allowed for moving objects and people quickly from one place to another. And again, this led to the development of roads, maybe even domestication of animals, and more trade and commerce. Then there was the plow. This allowed for more efficient cultivation of fields, and therefore there was more food in the population. So now not everybody had to farm. So now you had people that could be artists or people that could write things. You also have when you have a plow and then you have a surplus of grain, you have to figure out how much more grain you have. So some of the first writing that we have records of, little clay tablets, are tallying how much grain somebody has. Okay, and so that led to a huge societal change in terms of having written language or writing things down. And then the printing press, probably one of the biggest societal changers. Books became accessible to the masses. It wasn't just the elite that could have the books, and reading began to become a necessity for everybody. Books changed the way our societies think about knowledge and how it was accessed and how it was consumed. And this led almost directly to the Reformation, because one of the things that Martin Luther was they excommunicated him for was because of his pounding things on church doors. But no, it was when he said, "I'm going to translate the Bible into German." That was the one that they said, no, you can't do that, because we don't want people actually reading this stuff. We want them to go to the priests and get the information. But now you've got a printing press, and you can't stop it. Now everybody has a book, and everybody can read the Bible, and everybody can have that information. And that changed things so much that the church changed. It split, and then there were all sorts of stuff over the last, 500, 600, 700 years. But if you look around today, we still have churches. We have many different denominations of churches, but we still have churches. And I would say that we're at this point with higher education, with tablet technology, with all the things that people have. They've got students are expecting to have instant information. They're expecting to have it right there in their hands. The students that are going to come to school in 2020, and my son was born in 2008. So, let's say 2025. He'd never know a time when he didn't have a phone, when he didn't have all that information right in his pocket, when you couldn't access that on a phone, have it all at the tip of your fingers. So currently, we can't conceive of education without books. But again, we did before. So the future generations will feel the same way about these tablets and about phones and having that stuff in your pocket. And so the old model of pedagogy that is teacher-focused one way and one size fits all makes no sense to these people who've grown up in a digital world. Many times we call them digital natives, but that term I think is probably going to change, because again, everybody becomes digital natives. How do you talk about these kids that are mobile natives, right? Future college students of 2025 will never remember a time when there was not pad-based mobile devices or smartphones everywhere. Schuler suggests that mobile devices have a significant potential to be a key ally in supporting learning experiences, that they suggest even preschool children. And I work with preschool children a lot. That's my area. I'm actually an early childhood educator. that even preschool children, apps are unquestionably the new medium for providing educational content, both in terms of availability and popularity. A guy named Seymour Papert, 1988, he said he did a lot of studies, and he came up with these 5 things that he would encourage technology to use with children. This is with young children or high school students, and I think that they resonate today. That we need to seek out open-ended projects that foster students to use the materials in many different ways, and computers and more materials. So it's not just the delivery process. This is not just something for delivery, but it's actually for content creation, for building, for making things. That was one of the things that Papert was really into. How can you use this technology to make things new? Encourage activities with students to use computers to solve real problems. Connect with work done on a computer to what goes on in the rest of the school day. And again, that's kind of that flipped classroom model. Recognize the unique qualities of computers, taking advantage of their precision, adaptability, extendability, and have it mirror the students' ideas of construction of reality. And take advantage of this was 88, low-cost technology such as temperature light sensors and those types of things. I did have a video, but I'm not going to show it to you. If you want to see it, you can come and see me sometime. This is my son. He is 5 years old, and what he was going to show you, and again, if you come and see me, I'll show it to you, was using robotics, a computer to program a robot. Okay, and he's 5. And he wanted to make a video to show everybody how to do that. So that's the type of thing that we are looking at. Kids that are so comfortable with technology that this is what they do. And it's how we think about it in our classrooms and making sure that we're on the same page as they are. So thank you very much for listening, and hope I did good.
Thank you very much, Dr. Geis. As the great saint Yogi Berra says, the future isn't what it used to be. And last but not least, we're going to be finishing our TED Talk portion of our program today with a talk by TED. Professor Welser. Dr. Welser is a associate professor of sociology, and he's going to talk about using technology to empower creativity and collaboration. And
So speaking of technology, this is a page where I organize all my links. I guess it's my digital portfolio. And so I have a page about digital literacy, and my talk today is about using technology to empower creativity and collaboration. And if you want to look at the slides, you can just go to my page, you just Google me, and let's see, where do we start? Will this work with this? I bet it does. Cool. Okay, so my title officially is using technology to empower creativity and collaboration, but that's not TED Talk enough. So I think what I would rather say is what I'm here to do is to help you change your world with boring technology. And there's a reason that the technology should be boring, is because it should be technology that people actually use. So what I like to do is, in my classes, help the students bridge from what they know to what they need to know in order to succeed in their futures, in their careers, both as students and in their profession. And what they already know how to do is share pictures of cats, of their breakfast that morning, of what they were thinking of while they were walking to school, right? They know how to use social media. And so in my classes, I have my students adopt yet another type of social media, one that typically they don't use because it's not cool, and it's called Google+. It's a lot like Facebook, but it's a little bit different, but they tend not to use it. So I invite them all strongly to create an account and start using it, and we use it to communicate in our class, to talk about our cats and our dogs and other things that occur to us, and we get used to using it. And that's a good thing, because what I want them to do is to branch out and start using things that they don't yet know how to use. So if we go back here a slide real quick, they know this, but they don't know this. And Google Drive is really just a label that's given to collaboratively editable documents that live online all the time and are never lost. They're always saved, and can be easily shared with localized groups and wider audiences, just like this talk. Right? If I had been a little bit more ambitious, I would have alerted you to this talk and asked you to give me some better things to say, right? Some better ideas to make it better, right? I could have done that. And maybe, I have it allowing comments, so maybe you can make suggestions for the next time I give a talk like this. I can make it better. So in my classes, I invite my students to start interacting, to post questions, to answer each other's questions using social media, and then we start working on projects where they write things up, they read each other's work, and they start working together. So what we're doing is we're building from their experience in social media, and we're introducing collaboration tools, and we're using real tools, tools that they might use on the job. These are tools I use all the time in my own work when I collaborate on research with faculty from around the country and around the world. We meet via these tools. And I also encourage them to do real work, and we're going to look at some real work that students in my capstone this spring did do. It's not my idea, this idea about boring technology. It comes from this guy named Clay Shirky, who wrote a book which now seems very, very long ago. In 2007 it came out. And so he has this cool quote, and other people have thought his quotes are cool, so you can just look it up online and find it. But the idea is that communication tools don't become socially interesting until they're technologically boring. So email lists and social media are now boring, right? And they become means through which we can do interesting social things. One of the things about social media, which is wonderful, is that it reduces transaction costs of people doing anything they might want to do. So if they have any sort of project, anything that they want to accomplish, if they're connected through social media, they can accomplish that more easily. That's why they have such great parties here at OU, because it's greased by the wheel of good social connections, right? And that they are able to accomplish more than they could otherwise. But we want to use that power, that skill that they have, to learn more and create more. It also facilitates coordination and creates common knowledge, so that I know that you know that we all know what we just heard. Right? And in social media, you see that. You send out an email to an email list, you don't know who got it, you don't know what's going on, right? You post something on social media, you can see how many people have seen it, who've seen it, when they've seen it, right? And it makes it easier for students to get things done. So here we go. Here's a great example. We have artichoke dip. Delicious. It's amazing, right? This is a contribution to my class, right? And it's good because it's boring, right? Because it paves the way for this, which is socially and educationally interesting. This is a post from a student, a link to a Google Doc, naming his collaborators, talking about the contributions he made, giving positive feedback to the contributions other students made. They all see it. Everyone in the class sees that this group is making good progress, right, on this resource that they're creating. So through social media, we have an opportunity then to start working on things. Through linked resources, we can tag our coworkers, we can recognize contributions, the value, we can create value for others. It's very low cost, it's easy to use once they know how, and then it also has these benefits of helping them work together better. This is what they were working on. So the students in my social media, social networks, and social change class, they designed the second half of the class. They came up with the assignments, and this is the final. And so what they're doing is they're making a handout to give to sociology majors to help them navigate a career into one of the career paths that many of our students take, which is in enforcement and policing. Right? What do they need to know? What do they need to do? Here's one of the students that's on that career path that contributed to it. This is the material they're putting together. It encourages other people to find our department online. This is the sort of thing that's nice to have. It's nice to give to parents. They come in, they want to say, what am I going to do with this degree? Well, here's what we are doing with it, and here's how to become a success at it. And why did we do this project? Because the students, who are almost all seniors, didn't have enough of this. They eventually figured it out, and they realized this is the value they have. They're experts in this. They're pros at it, but they're about to retire, go out there, and we're going to lose their knowledge. And so because they were empowered to work together and collaborate, they chose to create value for each other in a way that they could uniquely make that value beyond artichoke dip. This is also one of my favorite posts to the conversation, because one of my favorite students is watching golf, the Masters, during class. So this is my class. There I am sitting in the middle. Everyone's got their laptops. They're all working on stuff, right? But Zach is also, right, watching the Masters. And this is, I think, what we have to accept as part of the reality, that our working environment is part of the rest of our lives still. Our social worlds have become part of our work. And this student pointed out that he was in my Intro to Social class a couple years ago where I had students use Google Docs. Since that time, this student that's watching golf has collaborated 31 different times on projects with other students using Google Docs in order to accomplish their projects more effectively and get more done. Other students in the class talked about how they use collaborative note-taking. They show up to their theory class, they sit in different parts of the room. One of them gets down all the definitions, the other one gets down all the examples, the third person writes integrative notes and prepares for the exam. They're doing it in real time in class, taking the notes, creating a valued resource for all of them. Finally, the students in this class, they were asked to reflect on their social media use, and not so much at my behest, but they realized, wow, I got to get my act together. People want to find out about what I can do. So they started to professionalize their social media presence, right? So the ideas about working together effectively and collaborating and thinking about the bigger picture, they fed that back into what they do in their free time, in their social life, and they made themselves become more professional. They developed LinkedIn pages, they professionalized their resumes, they started thinking about their careers, all because they started to reflect on these tools that they were already using and started thinking about them to accomplish what they want to do. All right, so kind of the punchline for this whole thing is I think that if we start with social media, we build that in with collaboration tools, we get the students working together and interacting and thinking about what they can contribute, the value that they can bring that's unique to them, they will advance their careers much more effectively than if they're doing things that are more prescripted and more kind of rigidly constructed. And that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. And thank you all very, very much. I don't know, Laura, if you want to say a few words at the conclusion for the TED Talks, or yeah, I don't know what more to add. Thank you, Dr. Condi, Dr. Welser, and Dr. Geis. Our next portion of the program are going to be 3 25-minute breakouts. For those who are unfamiliar with Alden Library and the 3rd floor, we're in 319. 318 is the computer lab on this side, the west side. On this side is 318, a computer lab, with sessions immediately following this meeting. And inside the faculty commons where you had lunch is 301E and 301U. If you have any questions about finding a space, please don't hesitate to ask either me or Dr. Hatch. For those who have just arrived, we still have plenty of food. Please make yourselves at home. But the next segment of sessions begins at 1:35 and they last 25 minutes each. Thank you all very, very much. And special thanks to our presenters once again. Thank you.